Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Audra Charles stormed into Crimson Lights with her heart pounding and her hands trembling slightly, the familiar mix of frustration, desperation, and a hint of fear burning behind her eyes. She had rehearsed her words over and over on the drive there, each sentence meant to finally shake some truth loose from Nate Hastings, to make him see just how much she had changed, how much she had endured, and how much she still cared. Yet the moment she spotted him across the cafe, casually sipping his coffee as though the world weren't crumbling around them, something inside her faltered. The sight of him laughing lightly at a joke Victoria Newman made sent a sharp pang through her chest. Her stomach twisted with a cocktail of jealousy and hurt, and she realized, with bitter clarity, that Nate might not just be angry, he might be done. Taking a deep breath, Audra squared her shoulders and approached him, her footsteps echoing louder than she intended in the quiet hum of Crimson Lights. "Nate," she said, her voice trembling just enough to betray the steel she was trying to project. "We need to talk." He looked up at her, and for a split second, there was a flicker of something. Pity, irritation, maybe even nostalgia, but no warmth. "Audra," he said, his tone flat and careful, as if each word were measured and weighed. "I don't think there's anything to talk about." And there it was, the cold shoulder she had dreaded. The rejection stung like a slap to the face, and Audra felt herself teetering on the edge of something she couldn't quite name, heartbreak, fury, or a dangerous mix of both. Her hands went to her hips, almost unconsciously, as though bracing herself for the verbal fight she had imagined for days. "You think you can just walk away from everything I've done, everything I've admitted, everything I've begged you to forgive?" she demanded, her voice rising. Nate looked at her steadily, unwavering, and that unwavering gaze crushed her just as much as it angered her. He didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply held up a hand, signaling the conversation was over, and Audra's breath caught in her throat. It was clear, no amount of apologies, no matter how heartfelt, could bridge the chasm she had created with her lies and past betrayals. And then, as if the universe itself was mocking her, she saw him glance at Victoria with a warmth she knew she had once shared with Nate herself. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut, he was moving on. And maybe, just maybe, he had already moved on. The sting of jealousy burned hotter now, forcing her to face a truth she had resisted. Nate Hastings, the man she had loved, was no longer hers to fight for. Audra's hands dropped to her sides as the fight left her, replaced by a hollow ache that seemed to settle in her chest like a stone. She knew she couldn't force his feelings, couldn't twist fate or time back in her favor, and reluctantly, she made a choice. Maybe it was time to stop trying. Maybe it was time to walk away, to stop clinging to a spark that had clearly died in Nate's eyes. And yet, even as she made that decision, her heart protested. She still cared. She still loved. But she had to admit that love alone couldn't repair what had been broken. There would be anger, there would be grief, and yes, there would be jealousy, sharp, lingering, and inescapable, but Audra Charles had survived worse, and she would survive this, too. Somewhere deep inside, she would find the strength to rise above, to reclaim her independence, even if it meant letting go of the one person who had once been everything. Meanwhile, the Abbott family was facing its own storm, one that could shake Chabot to its core. Ashley and Tracy Abbott were reeling from the latest troubling reports that had landed in Jack Abbott's hands. The stolen AI program, one that had somehow slipped directly into Victor Newman's control, posed a threat not only to Chabot's business but to the very balance of power in Genoa City. Jack, ever the strategist, was aware of the danger and of the fact that timing was critical. He had spent sleepless nights weighing options, calculating moves, anticipating Victor's next steps, and preparing for a counterstrike that could either protect his company or tear his family apart. When Ashley asked, her brow furrowed with both concern and determination, if he had a plan, Jack hesitated for just a moment before admitting that he did. But the confession was layered with tension. He knew the plan was controversial, potentially divisive, and that even the closest members of his family might not see the wisdom behind it. It's risky, Jack said, his voice steady but low, but it might be the only way to keep Jabot safe. Victor won't play fair, and neither can we. Tracy, always the pragmatic one, pressed further, her eyes narrowing with suspicion and urgency. Are you saying this plan will put some of us in danger? She asked, her tone more cautious than accusatory. Jack shook his head, though the weight of responsibility was etched in every line of his face. Not danger exactly, but it will require trust. Trust in me and in each other. And I won't lie, it might not be easy to get everyone on board. The sisters exchanged a glance, their minds racing through the potential fallout, the family politics, the unlikely alliances that would need to be forged. The tension in the room was palpable, a tangible force that seemed to press down on each of them. And yet, despite the challenges, there was a glimmer of hope. Jack's determination, his careful planning, and his willingness to risk it all for the family he loved suggested that perhaps they could navigate this storm. Still, each Abbott knew the stakes, one misstep, one miscalculation, and Victor Newman could turn their lives, their careers, and their family legacy into chaos. It was a delicate balance of courage and cunning, of risk and reward, and the clock was ticking. Back at Crimson Lights, Audra found herself lingering a little longer than she intended, nursing her coffee as though the bitter liquid could numb the ache inside her chest. Her thoughts swirled with images of Nate, of Victoria, of the moments they had shared and lost. She tried to reason with herself. To tell herself that it was time to move forward, to focus on her own life, her own dreams, her own path to happiness. Yet the rawness of rejection, the sharp sting of jealousy, and the lingering threads of love made it nearly impossible to think clearly. She could almost hear Nate's voice in her head, measured and firm, signaling that no matter how many apologies she offered, the past could not be rewritten. And as much as it hurt, as much as her pride and heart ached, Audra knew he was right. Sometimes love wasn't enough, and sometimes the hardest choice was to step back, to allow the other person to find peace while you struggled to find your own. With a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of every heartbreak she had ever known, Audra finally rose from her seat, the decision made, at least for now. She would find her inner strength. She would learn to live without Nate's affection defining her happiness. And she would face whatever came next with her head held high, even if the journey was long, difficult, and fraught with emotional turbulence. The road ahead was uncertain, but Audra Charles was nothing if not resilient, and Genoa City had a way of testing that resilience at every turn. As Audra stepped outside, the chilly evening air brushing against her face, she felt a mix of freedom and trepidation. Somewhere in the distance, the lights of the city glimmered, a reminder that life continued, full of possibilities yet to be explored. Audra would navigate the maze of her emotions, her pain, her jealousy, and her love, slowly piecing together a path forward that was uniquely hers. Meanwhile, back at Jabot, the Abbott family would confront their own trials, their own fears, and their own high-stakes battles, proving that even in a city as ruthless as Genoa, courage, loyalty, and determination could still carve a way through chaos. In a world where love and betrayal often collided, where personal and professional lives intertwined in unexpected ways, both Audra and the Abbotts were learning the same vital lesson: survival required both heart and strategy, and the strength to face adversity, no matter how painful or complicated, would define them more than any setback ever could. Audra's steps carried her down the streets of Genoa City, the cool night air doing little to soothe the fire of frustration and jealousy still simmering inside her. She kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting Nate to appear, to chase her down, to make everything right, but deep down she knew that moment wasn't coming. She had allowed herself to imagine reconciliation so many times that reality now felt almost cruel in its clarity. Nate had moved on. Nate had chosen Victoria Newman. And for Audra Charles, there was nothing left but the bitter taste of rejection and the gnawing ache of what might have been. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to focus, to find a fragment of strength somewhere buried beneath the hurt. She had always prided herself on resilience, on the ability to pick herself up even when life knocked her down, but tonight, the challenge felt monumental. Every memory of laughter, every lingering touch, every whispered word shared in secret flashed through her mind, reminding her of the connection she had believed unbreakable. And yet, here she was, alone in the darkened streets, forced to confront the unbearable truth that some bonds were not meant to endure. Meanwhile, Nate sat at a table back inside Crimson Lights, his hands wrapped around his coffee cup as though the warmth could anchor him amidst the storm of his own conflicting emotions. He had known Audra would confront him sooner or later, the question was never if, but when. And now that it had happened, he felt a mix of relief, guilt, and an undeniable ache in his chest. He hadn't wanted to hurt her, hadn't wanted to dismiss her feelings so completely, but after everything, after the betrayals, the lies, the manipulations, he had realized that forgiveness was not enough to erase the past. And perhaps most painfully, he had to admit that his heart was no longer in the fight. Victoria Newman had come into his life at a time when he needed stability, trust, and the kind of unwavering support he could no longer expect from Audra. And though he knew the new relationship was far from perfect, it was a chance for a fresh start, something he knew he could not give Audra again. He let out a slow, deliberate breath and stared into his coffee, the swirling steam rising like the ghosts of memories that refused to leave him in peace. He loved Audra, that much was undeniable, but love alone did not heal broken trust or undo past mistakes. And in a world as complicated and treacherous as Genoa City, sometimes even the strongest emotions weren't enough to save what was lost. As Audra walked, her thoughts drifted to her own life outside the tangled web of romantic disappointment. She needed purpose beyond Nate, beyond Victoria, beyond the heartache that threatened to consume her. She needed clarity, direction, a renewed sense of self that wasn't defined by the men who had come and gone in her life. Her mind wandered to her career, her friendships, and the people she could help, the projects she could pour herself into. And yet, even as she forced herself to think pragmatically, the sting of jealousy and lingering affection refused to fade completely. Audra had always known that emotions were messy, unpredictable, and often painful, but this was more than just sadness, it was a storm of conflicting feelings, each one demanding acknowledgement. She had to face them, process them, and ultimately learn to coexist with the parts of herself that still longed for what she had lost. Only then could she move forward, only then could she reclaim her life from the shadow of unrequited love. Back at Jabot, the tension had escalated as Ashley and Tracy processed Jack's revelation about Victor's possession of the stolen AI program. Tracy's normally calm and analytical demeanor was fraying at the edges, replaced by a tense vigilance that mirrored her sister's concern. "Jack, this is serious," Ashley said, her voice sharp, filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "Victor won't hesitate to use this against us. We need to act, and fast." Jack nodded, acknowledging the urgency while simultaneously grappling with the enormity of the task he had undertaken. His plan was bold, audacious, and fraught with risk, but it was the only option that could potentially neutralize Victor's advantage. "I know," he said, his tone low and steady, carrying the weight of someone who had lived through countless battles in both boardrooms and personal conflicts. "And I'm ready for whatever it takes. But I need you both to trust me, and to trust that I've thought this through. This isn't just about strategy. This is about protecting Jabot, our family, and everything we've worked for." Tracy exchanged a glance with Ashley, both of them wrestling with the gravity of the situation. There was no room for error, no margin for hesitation, and yet, the sisters could feel the pulse of determination in Jack's words. If anyone could lead the family through this storm, it was him, but the stakes had never been higher. One misstep, one wrong decision, and Victor Newman could dismantle everything they held dear. Meanwhile, Audra found herself drawn into the quieter corners of the city, seeking solace in places that reminded her of simpler times. She wandered past familiar streets and neighborhoods, each turn evoking memories she had tried to suppress. There was the park where she had shared laughter and secrets with Nate, the little coffee shop where they had first met, the quiet street corner where so many pivotal moments of their past had unfolded. Every landmark carried the weight of nostalgia and heartbreak, and Audra felt both comforted and haunted by the ghosts of their shared history. She closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of reflection, a fleeting reprieve from the chaos of emotion swirling within her. She understood, in that moment, that healing was not linear, that it would be messy, unpredictable, and often painful, but it was necessary. And while she could not change the past, she could choose how to face the future, how to rebuild her life, and how to reclaim the joy that had been overshadowed by heartbreak. Back at Crimson Lights, Nate remained seated, lost in thought, unaware that Audra had left the building. He sipped his coffee slowly, each swallow a reminder of the void that lingered between what had been and what was now. Victoria, sitting nearby, caught his distant gaze and reached out, placing a hand over his. Her touch was gentle, reassuring, a subtle reminder that life continued and that new connections could be forged even after profound loss. Nate's mind drifted to Audra once more, and though the ache of what could not be was still present, he allowed himself to acknowledge the possibility of something new, something hopeful. It was not an easy choice, nor was it one he embraced without hesitation, but in Genoa City, where love and betrayal often collided with ruthless frequency, he had learned that survival required both courage and pragmatism. Meanwhile, at Jabot headquarters, Jack's plan began to take shape. He outlined the strategy for Ashley and Tracy with meticulous detail, emphasizing the critical moves, the contingencies, and the delicate balance of trust required to execute it successfully. "We need to anticipate every possible reaction from Victor," Jack explained, pacing the room as he spoke. "He's cunning, ruthless, and unpredictable. One misstep, and we lose everything. But if we play this right, we can regain control, and perhaps even turn the tables in a way that surprises him." Ashley nodded, absorbing every word, her analytical mind working to anticipate potential pitfalls and hidden threats. Tracy listened intently, her intuition guiding her through the complexities of corporate warfare while her loyalty to the family provided the moral compass she relied on in times of uncertainty. Together, the Abbott siblings began to strategize, their combined strengths forming a formidable force against the looming threat. As the night deepened, Audra finally returned to her apartment, physically exhausted but mentally alert. She sank into her favorite chair, reflecting on the whirlwind of emotions she had navigated throughout the evening. Heartbreak, jealousy, anger, and sorrow had all made their presence known, yet beneath it all lay a stubborn ember of determination. She would survive this, she told herself firmly, and she would emerge stronger, wiser, and more in control of her life than ever before. Audra reached for her journal, a trusted companion through countless trials, and began to write, pouring her thoughts and feelings onto the pages as a means of release and self-discovery. Each word she wrote was a step toward healing, each sentence a reaffirmation of her resilience and her commitment to herself. Across town, Nate left Crimson Lights as well, his mind a maelstrom of reflection and cautious hope. He understood that the choices he made tonight, and in the days to come, would shape not only his own future but also the lives of those around him. He had navigated the treacherous waters of love, betrayal, and forgiveness countless times, yet the lessons he learned never came easily. As he walked through the streets of Genoa City, he resolved to face the future with honesty, courage, and integrity, knowing that every decision carried consequences both immediate and far-reaching. Meanwhile, the Abbott family prepared for the next stage of their high-stakes battle. Jack, Ashley, and Tracy worked late into the night, fine-tuning their strategy, anticipating Victor's moves, and ensuring that Jabot would emerge from this challenge intact. They knew the road ahead would be perilous, fraught with tension, and filled with unexpected twists, but together, they were determined to face it head-on. Every conversation, every decision, every calculated risk was a testament to their commitment to family, to loyalty, and to the enduring belief that, in Genoa City, courage and cunning were the keys to survival. As dawn approached, Audra sat by her window, watching the first light of day break over the city. The streets below were quiet, yet teeming with the unspoken promise of new beginnings, second chances, and unforeseen challenges. She allowed herself a small, tentative smile, a recognition that life would continue, that love and loss were intertwined, and that she had the strength to face whatever came next. Genoa City had tested her, battered her, and forced her to confront the deepest corners of her heart, but Audra Charles had endured, and she would continue to endure, ready to embrace the future with courage, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. Jack, Ashley, and Tracy continued their preparations at Jabot, confident that their combined strength, intelligence, and loyalty could navigate the complex and treacherous world of corporate espionage. Each decision they made was weighed carefully, each move executed with precision, and each contingency planned with foresight. The battle against Victor Newman was far from over, yet the Abbotts were ready to meet the challenge head-on, proving that, in a city where power, ambition, and betrayal often collided, family, strategy, and courage could still prevail. Audra, Nate, and the Abbotts, all intertwined by fate, emotion, and ambition, were now poised on the precipice of their next chapters. For Audra, it was a journey of self-discovery and healing. For Nate, it was a path of new love, tempered by reflection and the lessons of the past. And for the Abbotts, it was a battle to protect everything they had built while facing one of the most formidable adversaries in Genoa City. Each character stood at the intersection of choice and consequence, navigating the stormy waters of emotion, strategy, and destiny, proving that, even in the most challenging times, resilience, courage, and determination could guide them through the chaos. And so, the night gave way to morning, the city slowly awakening to another day of drama, intrigue, and emotional upheaval. Audra felt a sense of quiet resolve, Nate embraced the possibility of love and redemption, and the Abbotts readied themselves for the high-stakes challenges that awaited. In Genoa City, nothing stayed still for long, and the only certainty was the unpredictable, intertwining paths of love, ambition, betrayal, and hope. As each character prepared for the battles ahead, whether internal, emotional, or corporate, they understood that survival required both heart and strategy, and that the choices they made in the coming hours could change the course of their lives forever.